So I get this question all the time from people thinking about starting a nonprofit. And the question is, can you make money with a nonprofit organization? The thing is, there are a couple of different ways to interpret this question, and 3 ways in particular that I'm going to talk about in this video. 1, can the nonprofit itself generate revenue? 2, can you be a paid employee with a nonprofit organization? And 3, can you as a founder make money with the nonprofit that you started? So in this video, we're going to cover the answers to all 3 of those possible interpretations of the question, can you make money with a nonprofit organization? Welcome back to my channel. I'm Amber Melanie Smith, and I am a nonprofit founder and executive director who makes these videos on YouTube all about creating a social impact, whether that's through starting a nonprofit or raising money for a cause that you care about or starting a socially conscious business. So I hope that you find this video is helpful to you. Don't forget to take a look at my now over 200 videos on this channel all about these topics to see what might be able to help you out in your own journey as a change maker. I also have a newsletter you can check out below this video that's for change makers, and I'll sometimes share strategies and funding opportunities that I come across, so you don't want to miss that. Subscribe below. And finally, check out my website, foundertofulltime.com, for some online courses and trainings on starting a nonprofit and creating a sustainable fundraising plan for that nonprofit. Okay, all that out of the way, let's get into our topic. All right, let's lay the groundwork for this question here. Unlike for-profit private businesses, nonprofits are legally structured to prioritize serving a public or social impact mission over generating profits and revenue. So, in a nonprofit, your main outcome, the way you're measuring your success, is how much of an impact are you making in the world. So I can understand a misconception that nonprofit means no profit, but that actually couldn't be farther from the truth, because as we know in this world, in order to get things done, it takes money, and nonprofits are no exception. Nonprofits are raising money and generating revenue all the time in order to fund the missions that they are set up to support and make an impact for. So let's consider interpretation of the question number 1. So that one is, can the nonprofit itself generate revenue? Like I said, common misconception is that the word nonprofit means no profit, but that is not accurate. Nonprofits do and must often generate revenue, and that can also mean profit, which simply means the difference between the expenditures and what's left over in the bank. For those unfamiliar with how nonprofits can make money, it can be a number of different ways. Nonprofits are given tax-exempt status and can provide tax deductions for donations. So nonprofits often raise money through individual donations of varying sizes, from $5 to $5 million, grants, applying for those sponsorships, events, and also earned income or program fees. This is something I've talked about in other videos. Nonprofits can charge a reasonable fee for their services, products, or programs, as long as those services, products, and programs further the actual mission of the nonprofit and are not a service or product that's completely unrelated to the mission of the nonprofit. If you're more interested in learning about that, check out my other video called "Can Nonprofits Charge for Their Services?" I go into detail here about some of the different examples of what that might look like for an organization to do that, and might get your wheels turning. So then, if a nonprofit can generate profits, where do those profits go? This is the big difference between a nonprofit and a for-profit business. In a for-profit business, excess money, those profits, would be paid out to stakeholders or the owner of the company. That is not the case in a nonprofit. A nonprofit that has profits left over after its expenditures is expected to reinvest that money back into the mission of the organization. And that means investing in the organization's infrastructure, its program needs. It could be hiring more staff, etc. A common misconception about nonprofits is that the founder is the owner of the nonprofit, but that is actually not true. The nonprofit is, if it achieves legal nonprofit status, it is considered to be owned by the community and led by a governing board of directors that makes strategic decisions on the organization's budget and oversees its finances and all of that. But none of those people, not the board, not the founder, are considered stakeholders who would receive a profit from the nonprofit. All of the money is going back into the organization's mission. One thing to note, that it is okay for the nonprofit to put the excess money, the profits, into a savings account or an operating reserve, or sometimes known as an emergency fund or rainy day fund. That is an acceptable use of the profits because you want to make sure that your nonprofit is financially sustainable and strong in the case of global crisis or an emergency. Many nonprofits during the pandemic that didn't have a savings account or operating reserve were hit pretty hard financially, and some had to close their doors. So having an operating reserve is a totally acceptable thing you can do as a nonprofit, and it's a recommended practice. Obviously, you don't want that operating reserve to get to such an astronomically high number that it doesn't make sense for you to keep it all in a separate account instead of expand your mission somehow. You always want to be mission focused, but it is a smart financial decision to have an operating reserve and to be putting some money into that each month, each year, if you can, to save in case of emergency. Let's tackle the second angle of this question of, can you make money with a nonprofit? And that angle is, can you be a paid employee with a nonprofit? The short answer is yes, of course. In fact, nonprofits employ about 1/10 of the United States adult workforce. So that just gives you a sense of the scale of just how many people are paid employees of nonprofit organizations in the United States. Despite this, there's still a perception that if you work for a nonprofit, you are an unpaid volunteer all the time. Me and my colleagues, despite having worked many years as paid employees for nonprofit organizations, still get asked about this and are still met with surprise by people when we say, oh yeah, I'm a paid employee with a nonprofit. So yes, not only can nonprofits pay employees, but employees with skills and professional experience are often really important for driving the mission forward in an effective manner. And in case you're unfamiliar with the types of roles that you might get paid for in a nonprofit organization, a lot of them are similar to what you might find in a business. Nonprofits have positions across the board, everything from marketing to fundraising to the executive director position, of course, to administrative assistant. Depending on the mission of the organization, you might have some mission-specific types of roles too. You might be a nonprofit hospital and have medical staff. You might be an animal rescue and have vets on your staff as well. It really depends on the organization, but the bottom line here is there are many, many, many opportunities to be a paid employee with a nonprofit. And I talk about some of these roles in another video that I have, types of jobs that you can get in a nonprofit. So check that out too if you're interested in hearing about some more of these types of roles that you might be able to get in a nonprofit as a paid employee. Working for a nonprofit can be a really rewarding career choice for folks that are passionate about all sorts of issues, from education to civil rights, everything. You might be thinking to yourself, yeah, okay, I can work for a nonprofit, but I'm not going to make any money. Really, am I, Amber? Actually, nonprofits can be quite competitive in their salaries, and it really depends on the organization's size, its budget, where it's located in the United States, and salaries even differ by what issue is being tackled. I have a handful of other videos on this channel that give example salaries of different roles in nonprofits, so you can check that out too. Just use the search bar, salaries nonprofits on my channel, and I'm sure a couple of those will come up from the past couple of years, and I like to show those trends and how they're changing too. But the bottom line, like I said before, is that we're talking about solving very complicated social issues here: hunger, food insecurity, homelessness, mental wellness. All of these things are really solved well when you can put skilled professionals with experience in these areas and a lot of expertise on the case. So hiring professional staff is a really good move for a nonprofit, and lots of nonprofits are doing that. All right, perspective number 3 on this question is, can you, as a founder of a nonprofit, make money at the nonprofit that you started? This is probably one of the most common questions I get on this channel and out in the wild in my life, and it's nuanced. The answer is yes, basically, but you need to be hired by your board of directors to be a paid employee for the nonprofit organization. Like I said before, you're not like a business or for-profit business owner that is receiving profits from the organization. That's not how the nonprofit is structured. But like I said in the last section, you can be a paid employee, and that includes you as the founder. The main point of confusion around this is that you as the founder can't just hire yourself. You can't just say, I'm going to be a paid executive director now, and have that unilateral decision. To avoid what's called a conflict of interest, which is a policy that the IRS in the United States requires nonprofits to have, you can't make decisions for the organization that exclusively personally benefit you, even if you're the founder. So how this would work is your board of directors would vote on whether or not to hire you, the founder, as the executive director or any other position in the organization. Presumably, I would most assume that they want to be the executive director if you're a founder. They would vote to hire you, and then they would take a look at the budget and they would say, here's what we can afford to make your salary, and then you'd have to say, yep, or nope, that doesn't work for me, and have a back and forth. But ultimately, the board is voting on this decision. Clarifying a point I just made, the executive director would be the one to hire staff under them. So the board isn't hiring like your marketing manager. That should be the executive director's decision. But you got to have the executive director in place first in order for them to make that decision. If you're wondering how salaries are determined in a nonprofit, it's a lot of factors that come together to answer that question. Most obvious is the size of the budget of the organization. You can't pay someone if your budget doesn't accommodate their salary and your fundraising strategy doesn't accommodate their salary. A best practice for the board of directors is to do a compensation analysis where they're looking at what are other people in a similar role being paid in our geographical area. Because as I mentioned before, nonprofit budgets and the salaries of their employees are going to vary based on the organization's budget size, but also where they're located in the country or the world, and what's comparable for other people in a similar role. Now, the IRS does have its eyes on executive director salaries, and executive director salaries or top officer salaries are required to be reported in your annual taxes, and so the public will know your salary, which is fine. But in most cases, these salaries are probably less than what they should be instead of way too much. I know we hear in the news a lot about, oh, this nonprofit CEO is getting paid all this money, but that is so rare, and those stories just poison public perception of the nonprofit world in general. That being said, it is important for the board to offer a competitive salary because keeping and retaining talent is very important to the nonprofit sector. So in summary, while the aim of a nonprofit is not specifically to generate profits, it can, and they do, and they should be able to generate revenue and profit and invest that back into their mission. And you can be a paid employee and make money that way through a nonprofit organization. You as the founder could be hired as a paid employee. All of these things are possible. I hope that this has demystified this topic for you. And if you're interested in learning more about can you be paid as a founder, check out my other video that is on that topic. Yes, you can be paid for nonprofit work, but there's a catch. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all this. Has this cleared up this question? What questions might still remain? Leave those in the comments below. And like I said before, don't forget to check out my newsletter and subscribe to that to get, tips, strategies on change making, social impact, starting organizations, etc., and funding opportunities. The link to that's below. My website, foundertofulltime.com, where I have these online resources and courses for folks interested specifically in starting a nonprofit or developing a sustainable fundraising plan. Check those out, see if those might be helpful to you. And last but not least, I have my group on Facebook, Change the World or Bust. We have over 5,000 people from around the world, and they're making an impact and sharing their stories along the way. Please join us there. I'd love to have you, and we can engage there. That's all I have for you today. I'll see you next time.